Welcome back to Q&A. It's a tough time to be a tobacco company. The government wants cigarettes gone from New Zealand by 2025. Associate Health Minister Tariana Turia says, why muck about? They should be banned pronto. In a moment, we have a rare interview with tobacco giant Philip Morris, which owns Marlboro, the world's biggest selling brand of cigarette. I'll talk to New Zealand spokesman Christopher Bishop. But first, Damien Christie runs through the latest front lines in the war against smoking.
In April 2010, the government introduced a series of excise tax hikes, which saw a significant decline in smoking as a result. In March the next year, Associate Health Minister Tariana Turia expounded the government's vision, a smoke-free New Zealand by 2025.
I think any goal is realistic if you have a commitment to doing it.
Since then, Mrs Turia has upped her rhetoric, saying she'd ban cigarettes altogether.
I don't think that having a substance that kills people should be allowed to be sold.
In the meantime, the government is likely to introduce plain packaging on cigarettes, making us only the second or third country in the world, after Australia and possibly Britain. It's a move that has seen the Australian government sued by 4 multinational tobacco companies for breaching international agreements over intellectual property rights.
Well, I think if big tobacco think that by threatening or taking legal action they will intimidate our government into taking another course, they have picked the wrong government.
If it loses, the Australian government could pay out billions of dollars in damages, and some fear the same could happen here.
They will claim it's a violation of their intellectual property rights, their trademark, as well as whatever investments they may have made in manufacturing and distribution within New Zealand. The government is going to need to have real resolve to stand up to the kinds of threats that the tobacco companies will make.
There we have it. All right, Christopher Bishop, I should say, from Philip Morris joins us now. If this goes ahead in New Zealand, the way it's going ahead in Australia with plain packaging, can we expect a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit here?
Well, look, let's not put the cart before the horse. Where we're at the moment is there's a consultation phase that the government's announced, and the government said it wants to hear the views of the stakeholders, so industry and public health experts, and we'll be submitting our views to the government about that.
But if it happens?
Well, look, I'm just not going to speculate on that. It's just far too early to tell. You know, the government wants to hear from us, and we'll be making our views known to the government.
It's going ahead in Australia. That's taken as writ. It's hard to imagine what would be difference between the scenario in New Zealand and Australia if plain packaging comes in. And for those who don't know, plain packaging just means they're going to be an olive green colour, they're going to have the nasty photos on, and just your name in a plain font. That's it.
Yeah, I guess the real question is whether or not the regulation will be effective. So we acknowledge that tobacco is a harmful product, it's a very dangerous product, and it needs regulation. The key question is whether or not plain packaging will be effective at lowering smoking rates, and there aren't any studies to suggest that plain packaging will work at stopping people from taking up smoking or helping them to quit smoking. There's not one study that suggests that, and even the Australian Health Minister, which you previewed on the intro into the segment, has admitted that it's an experiment in Australia. So there's no evidence that it will actually work.
So what's your beef then? If you're saying it won't help people give up smoking or stop them taking up smoking, what's your beef? What's this based on?
Our big concern is our brands. Brands are important to any business, not just the tobacco industry, but if you think about the way in which, you know, the commerce works, brands are important.
The name's still on the packet.
Yeah, but the colours and the logos and the the architecture of our brands are not there. And so our argument is that it's a confiscation of our brands. And brands are important to any business in terms of product differentiation. So we use our brands to distinguish our products from other competitor products and try and encourage people who've made the decision to smoke to smoke our products. Do you not have a bit more
faith in your customers, dying though they may be, that they're going to be loyal to that brand? They'll see it's whatever, Rothmans, Pall Mall, Marlboro, whatever, and they'll be loyal to that brand. Don't you have a bit more faith in them?
Well, I think that's precisely the point, is that plain packaging won't reduce the number of people who smoke.
So then why is it an issue?
But it has an effect on competition. So brands are important in terms of promoting a particular type of image associated with a brand and encouraging people who've made the decision to smoke to switch to our products. So it's about product differentiation and distinguishing our products from our competitors, and that's what we're concerned about.
If they're that important, then we can take it pretty much as you will, Sue, if this goes ahead in New Zealand.
Look, it's way too early to tell on that. We're in a consultation phase. We want to make our views known to the government, and we want to try and convince them that there's no evidence it will work, but there is a lot of evidence that it will breach intellectual property treaties and trade treaties that New Zealand's subject to.
What about hiding the brands, hiding the cigarettes away? That happens next month. That's not an if thing. It's definitely going to happen. What sort of an impact do you think that's going to have on your trade?
Again, not very much. A few countries have tried this, and there hasn't been very much impact on smoking rates, Iceland and Norway. It will have an anti-competitive effect. So hiding the packs away will, again, not allow companies to compete. And when you think about it, it actually does call into question, whether or not plain packaging is necessary. So from 23 July, as you say, you won't be able to go into a dairy or a convenience store and see a cigarette pack behind the counter. So why do we need plain packaging? Everything is being removed. Why is plain packaging necessary?
The thinking behind this, though, as you well know, is that it's to stop kids taking up smoking. The average age in the New Zealand smoker is, when they start, is 14. If they see the bright colours, the packets there, and they're up on display, they're far more likely to start smoking than if they're hidden away in a drab olive green.
Well, there's been a lot of research done into why young kids take up smoking, and let me just say,
smokes are there. That's why they're taking up smoking. Because they're there and they're on display. That is, if they weren't there, they wouldn't be taking up smoking.
Well, let me just say from the outset, Philip Morris does not want young kids to take up smoking, and we support the prosecution of retailers who sell cigarettes to kids underage. But there's been a lot of evidence looking in at why young people take up smoking, and the packaging and the branding is irrelevant. It is essentially irrelevant as to why kids take up smoking. So taking away the branding from our packs will not reduce smoking initiation.
OK, so why do they take up smoking? If you've done the research as to why don't they take up smoking, why do they take up smoking?
Well, James Heckman, who's a Nobel Prize-winning social psychologist, has looked at this a lot, and it's what he describes as a multi-causal relationship. There's lots of different things. They get it from their parents, they get it from their peers. It's rebellious in some circumstances. It depends on the country, but the point is there's very little evidence to suggest that it's the branding that makes a difference in why people take up smoking. OK, let's talk about your mission statement. It's something that's on your website. Your website says, our products, like all tobacco products, cause disease and are addictive. Pretty simple. It's not good for you, and you're still flogging it. Yes, it's not good for you. And we support the regulation of it. That's why it's important the regulation is comprehensive and it reduces the harm. Why regulation? Why not just stop it? OK, I want to do a scenario with you. This is something that's been brought up a bit this week about cigarettes versus junk food. If I decide I want to have junk food 3 nights a week, provided I eat OK the rest of the time and I exercise OK and I drink lots of water, I'm probably not going to die. I'll be OK. If I decide I have 3 packets of cigarettes a week, 60 cigarettes, what's the counter for that? Well, we acknowledge it's a dangerous product, but you just mentioned, getting rid of it altogether, which I know that the Associate Minister has also talked about, Tariana Turia. Prohibition didn't work for alcohol in the 1920s. There will always be people who want to make the decision to smoke. And the critical question is, do we want them to buy cigarettes in a legal market that's regulated, where we can control who the cigarettes go to and they pay tax on the product they consume? Or do we want them to buy cigarettes from organised criminals who sell indiscriminately to minors and don't pay any tax on the product? I think the answer is pretty obvious. I'm glad you put the criminal side of things up and the black market side of things up, because it goes very well into the point about prisons. Prisons have now had a smoking ban for just over a year. I think it was the 1st of June last year. They've reported people are not aggro, there's no big black market. Some of them are calling relatives who come in to visit them saying, you know what, you should give up smoking as well. They've got more money for phone cards. As a microcosm of how this works, it's worked pretty damn well in prisons. Why would it not work the same when we've got law-abiding citizens who aren't in prisons? Well, I think prisons are a pretty closed environment compared to the rest of the country. I think, the example of prohibition of alcohol in the United States in the 20s demonstrates that when there's a demand for a product, and I think we can all agree there's certainly a demand for tobacco products, where there's a demand, somebody will come in to meet the supply. And in New Zealand, we know who it is who meets the supply of currently illegal products. Alcohol doesn't kill half the customers. If you have 1 or 2 drinks a week, you're fine. In fact, it'll probably do you some good. It doesn't kill half the people who drink alcohol. Tobacco and alcohol are different products, but the point I'm making... Yeah, but you're just saying that they're not that different. Well, the point I'm making the point that where there's a demand for something, so in the 1920s there was a demand for alcohol in the United States, organised criminals met it. In New Zealand, where there's a demand for tobacco, somebody will come in to meet that demand, and if you make it illegal, it will be organised criminals. Now, we already have a small but growing problem in terms of illicit tobacco in New Zealand. If you make tobacco illegal, somebody will fill that demand, they will sell to minors, and they won't pay tax on the product. And that should be a concern for our company, but also for the government. That says to me a lot about your customer base, that basically people who smoke cigarettes are willing to kind of break the law, or at least nudge it, to fix their habit. A pretty low opinion of the people who smoke cigarettes, isn't it? Oh, I'm just looking at the economic evidence that demonstrates. Well, there is no economic evidence because it's not been done in this country. Well, and the other difference is we're miles from anywhere. We're not Australia. We're not in the middle of the United States. We're a long way away. If people are going to start
bringing this in a black market scenario. We're a bit remote for that, aren't we?
Well, that's a fair point, but we're not too far away from Australia, and illicit tobacco in Australia is 13% of the market, and it's a $1 billion problem for the government over there. We know that there are people in New Zealand who grow their own tobacco. We know that customs makes busts of people who import tobacco. We know that people down in Motueka grow tobacco and sell it. So look, is it a massive problem in New Zealand at the moment? No. Is it a small but growing one? Absolutely. And plain packaging or even prohibition will make that problem worse.
Let's be really, really blunt about this. You guys aren't worried about the tax take. You're not worried about the black market. You're worried about your customers disappearing. That's the bottom line, isn't it? This is how you make money.
Well, we are worried about retailers. We are worried about the impact of plain packaging on intellectual property treaties that New Zealand is subject to and global trade treaties. So, you know, if you think about the World Trade Organisation, New Zealand used the rules of the World Trade Organisation to try and get apples into Australia. New Zealand, if it goes ahead with plain packaging, will be breaking the rules of the World Trade Organisation by setting up a two-tier system for trademark rights.
Yeah, but apples don't kill 5,000 people a year like they do in New Zealand.
I'm not saying that apples are comparable to tobacco. What I'm saying
Nothing's
is that...
comparable to tobacco. To be fair, nothing is comparable to tobacco. Nothing that's legally for sale at the moment is comparable to tobacco. It's in a class of its own.
Well, perhaps that's right, but I'm making the point about the rules of the World Trade Organisation. New Zealand used those rules in terms of apples, and now we're turning around and we're breaking the rules. I'll give you another example. New Zealand's arguing at the WTO at the moment that health warnings on alcohol labels are a breach of international trade rules, and that there's no evidence that it will work in terms of reducing the number of people who drink alcohol. So Thailand is introducing health warnings on alcohol bottles, and New Zealand is arguing against that, saying it's a breach of the rules. But in the next breath, New Zealand is turning around at the same organisation and saying that plain packaging of cigarettes, which does exactly the same thing, it takes away the trademarks of the tobacco industry, is acceptable. There's a double standard there.
Yeah, but a glass of two of wine a week's not going to damage you. I mean, again, I see where you're going with this, but you just can't compare anything to cigarettes. There's no good in cigarettes. There's no good that comes of it, and we're trying to get rid of it. Talking about the alcohol industry as well, in the last few years, it's adapted, it's changed, and let's face it, it's trying to get a younger market. It's had RTDs, it's changed the packaging of alcopops, things like that. What's the cigarette industry done?
Well, the cigarette industry has continued to be regulated, and
no. To adapt to this, it's the most regulated, squeezed industry in the whole wide world. What's it done to adapt?
Well, you know, not a huge amount in terms of adapting. What we do is we work with the regulations. Where the regulations, you know, we have a excessive impact on us, we try and persuade governments to not go down the regulatory route. That's certainly what we're doing with plain packaging. That's certainly what we're doing in terms of point-of-sale display bans. But we accept a lot of regulation. And in a number of countries, Philip Morris goes above and beyond the country's regulations and in terms of health warnings. So in a lot of countries, we're not required to put health warnings on our cigarette packs. We do so as a matter of our marketing code because we think that consumers should be informed about the health risks of smoking.
One of the other regulatory things that's being spoken about by Tauranga Turia, I believe, is banning the flavours that go into them, things like chocolate and cinnamon, to make it taste nice, because apparently just plain old tobacco tastes like smoked foot. Would that realistically be happening somewhere down the line, that those ingredients can get slowly taken out?
Well, some countries have looked at that. But again, there's not any evidence that removing ingredients from cigarettes makes any difference in terms of smoking uptake rates. There's two different types of cigarettes. There's, you know, the sort of pure Virginia blend cigarettes and American blend cigarettes, which do have small ingredients added to them. And, you know, America smokes a lot of American blended cigarettes, for example, but Commonwealth countries like New Zealand and Australia prefer the Virginia blend. But smoking rates, you know, between the two markets are pretty much comparable. So, you know, there's not any evidence that removing ingredients works to reduce the number of people who smoke.
Best case scenario from your guys' point of view is 2025, there's not going to be any cigarettes in New Zealand at all. How realistic is that?
Well, I don't think it's very realistic. 20% of New Zealanders smoke today. 2025 is 13 years away. Is it really realistic for the government to expect that no one in New Zealand will smoke at that time? And again, given that people will continue to want to smoke in New Zealand, do we want them to smoke through a regulated market where we can control access to minors and where people pay tax on the product, or do we want them to purchase from organised crime?
Do you smoke?
I enjoy an occasional cigarette, yeah.
Do you accept all the bad stuff that goes with it, though?
Yes, absolutely. It's a dangerous product. It's harmful to your health.
Having said that, there's a quote I want to read to you. American tobacco executive quoted in the New York Times saying, This is about a guy on an advert who was doing the ad for them, and there was a whole bunch of cigarettes lying around, and he asked if he'd had some, asked the executive, do you smoke? And he said, no, we reserve that for the poor, the young, the black and the stupid. Is that a prevalent sort of attitude in cigarette companies and tobacco companies?
Well, I haven't seen that quote before, but I can certainly tell you it's not a prevalent attitude amongst Philip Morris. We have great respect for our customers, and we have great respect for the people who make the decision to smoke.
All right, Christopher Bishop, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Greg.